Zelensky's victory plan for Ukraine has officially been revealed. It happened earlier today after a few days of announcements that it would be coming on the 16th. And during Ukraine's parliament meeting, Zelensky got up. He gave a very beautiful speech, then broke down the plan. It's broken down to 5 steps, we'll go over in a second. Then took to X to not only explain the plan, but it gave a lot more detail to it in multiple tweets. I mean, it was about like 30 or 40 different tweets. I went ahead and read every single piece of information that I could. That's why it took me a while this morning to put a lot of videos online, because it was a lot of information. And so I wanted to go ahead and break down the victory plan for you by step, what they mean, what they could be, and what it means moving forward. The one thing you have to understand is that it is broken down into 5 key points. One is an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO. Next is strengthening Ukraine's defense. Third is Ukrainian deterrence. Fourth is the development of strategic and economic potential for Ukraine. And number 5 is a post-war contribution to NATO. I have to say, before we break down into this, there really is nothing groundbreaking in this. These are things that I think a lot of people would just assume are common sense. And I just think that a lot of it is just permissions for certain things to kind of make Russia go, oh, we've got a problem if we don't end this soon. And I think that's really what this comes down to. And hopefully by the time I'm done explaining it, it would make some sense. So let's just go ahead and just kind of break it down. The one thing I do want to add is that there had been things redacted from this. A lot of it is classified information that would make sense that we wouldn't know what it is, because if it was public, then Russia would use it against Ukraine and get it to a point to where then having that in there makes no sense. So let's break down an invitation to join Ukraine. One of the big deterrents for Russia is if Ukraine has a clear path to join NATO, then Russia might take a step back and say, no, we should probably stop what we're doing, because even if we have some kind of, hey, we'll cut off this part of Ukraine and take the rest, we now will have a part of NATO, we probably should stop what we're doing now and just kind of negotiate. And what Zelensky is saying here is that Ukraine's invitation to join NATO would serve as a proof of determination and a signal from NATO of how NATO partners would envision Ukraine's role in the future of security architecture. Because from, I guess, NATO's point of view, they have always had this buffer zone of Ukraine to protect themselves from any kind of attack and invasion from Russia. Russia never wanted NATO. They never wanted NATO on Ukrainian land, which is one of the many reasons why Russia went into Ukraine, even though you and I both know that's not true. And there's actually more countries surrounding NATO now than there were even 3 years ago. But if there is this path for Ukraine to join it, it would tell Russia that, like, look, we've lost this. Our main goal is no longer a goal. We should probably stop what we're doing now if we want any kind of cooperation with the rest of the world. And so having a clear path for Ukraine to join NATO would help bring Russia to the negotiation table, ultimately. Number 2 is strengthening Ukrainian defense. And you already know some of these plans in this. One of them is to create a buffer zone, something that Russia also wants. But in this, it says that the buffer zone itself would not be in Ukraine, but would instead be inside of Russia. Imagine what Ukraine did in the Kursk region, but now imagine that much space that spans the entire coast of Ukraine, the entire eastern side, with Russia, with a massive, massive border. Now, there is some kind of border between Belarus and Ukraine. I forget how many kilometers it is. I want to say it's 4, maybe 5. So I don't know how big this one would be with Russia, but it would be a little bit different. It states here that this buffer zone would have enhanced anti-aircraft defenses, joint efforts with partners to shoot down Russian aircraft, and then it says it would be the expansion of Ukrainian drones and missiles, removing restrictions on their use inside of Russia and providing access to partner intelligence. So just to clear that up, that would mean Ukraine would want certain air defense systems on the border so that if anything comes close, everything can knock it down. Whether it be Patriot systems, whether it be Irises, whether it be a different kind of system, something there in permissions from NATO countries to allow to shoot them down. But the other part about expanding the use of Ukrainian drones and missiles is something that you've also heard before, and that is removing the restrictions on using Western weapons inside of Russia, or getting the permission to use, whether it be Tauruses, even though Ukraine doesn't have them, but using Scalps and Storm Shadows and things like that inside of Russia to target certain military objects. Once again, something that you've heard of before, but now it's kind of formally in there in strengthening Ukraine's defense. Number 3 is deterrence. Zelensky is calling for the development of a comprehensive non-nuclear deterrence package aimed at protecting Ukraine from Russia's aggression, and then limiting Russia's capabilities. Remember something, when Ukraine became independent, one of the clauses was that Ukraine gave up its nuclear powers so that, there would be nothing kind of sitting there. The United States was worried that Russia would get to it, and so the United States says, if you get rid of this, Ukraine, we will protect you, which obviously, unfortunately, didn't work. And so Ukraine is saying, we need to have something physically here in place so that, A, we don't have to rely on your protection like we were supposed to, and B, it would stop Russia from saying, hey, let's go through. They can't do a fight. Something that is non-nuclear, though, which, go back to the early 90s, Ukraine did have a lot of nukes, and according to the reports, they had the second largest arsenal of nukes at that time, which if Ukraine did have today, probably would have meant that Russia would have never invaded them. Number 4 is something that I am sure you've probably never heard of, and that is the development of strategic and economic potential for Ukraine. It's interesting. I don't think many people realize the resources that Ukraine has. From uranium, titanium, lithium, a lot of gas and oil. A lot of these things are actually the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine. They wanted all of the natural resources because there was a lot of money there. And so if you look at step number 4, which some of it is redacted, just like in step number 3, Zelensky wanted to highlight the need that Ukraine has all of these resources here, and that it is possible that he would partner up with certain countries, whether in the United States or in the EU, to have some kind of cooperation in using these resources. Because let's remember that if, say, the United States really needs lithium, for example, because they need them for batteries, if the United States is making billions and millions and all this money off of it, they would protect their assets over in Ukraine, which would in turn be another deterrence for Russia not to invade Ukraine again. And so this step would be a further kind of connection into NATO and the US saying to Ukraine, yes, we'll partner up with you for these resources and we'll protect you at the same time. The 5th step is post-war contribution to NATO. I don't think I need to be the one to tell you guys that right now, when it comes to war, Ukraine has the most experience in the world right now. Because you say to yourself, when was the last time the United States was in a war? When was the last time the EU was in a war? Yeah, I know. Ukraine has developed so many new techniques, new styles of fighting, and new equipment that has only been seen and used in Ukraine, which makes Ukrainians the most skilled fighters in the world right now. And Zelensky is making sure that NATO knows that our guys are so experienced that we can teach you guys some things which could help you guys down the line. And we're starting to see that, believe it or not, in the United States. In the United States, at this very moment, there are several groups of Americans who are now training to use drones, POV drones, recon drones, and other kind of things in order to fight on the battlefield, things which Ukrainians are the only ones skilled at. And so Zelensky, in saying this whole thing, post-war contribution to NATO, he says here that the Ukrainian military could apply its experience to help NATO and European defense efforts, even adding that there are certain areas inside of the European Union, which the US has, that Ukrainians could potentially replace them because, once again, Ukrainians have so much experience while other NATO countries do not, and so Ukrainians could replace US soldiers in certain areas to teach said certain other troops how to fight a modern war. Once again, go back and look at the history books. When was the last time EU countries and the United States was in an active war involving thousands and thousands of troops? It's been a while, even if you look at Desert Storm. Since then, technology has changed so much. And funny enough, who were the people who invented the new technologies? Ukrainians. Who is really taking drone warfare to another level that we've never seen before, and something that Russia doesn't even know how to comprehend yet? It's Ukrainians. So, going to what Zelensky's saying here, our military is currently the most active and the most skilled in modern warfare. Our troops could teach you guys, NATO, the United States, EU, how to fight in today's modern wars and how to win. And so that's where we are right now. This plan has officially been revealed, though once I said before, there are a lot of different things that are well hidden because we don't really know in step 3, 4, and 5. We're in a different war, folks. We're in a kind of war right now where Russia is now starting to bring in North Korea. Things are going to slowly start getting bigger and bigger, and I think other countries are looking at this and saying, well, first Iran was providing missiles and drones to Russia. Then they're getting chips from China, even though China says they're not, but they are. There's been plenty of proof of that. Then we started seeing weapons coming from North Korea, but now we're seeing North Korean troops fighting, or getting ready to fight, about 10,000 of them. We're seeing this get bigger and bigger. Wars take a while to evolve before they get to the point to where they're going to be full out blown. And I'm pretty sure right now, NATO, the EU, and the United States are seeing this and going, oh no, North Korea blowing up its roads in inter-North Korea or inter-Korea, seeing Russia use and rely on certain things, and at the same time, all Ukraine's been asking for is to strike inside of Russia to prevent a lot of this stuff from happening. It's only getting worse because we're not allowing Ukraine to do what they need to do. That being said, we are now seeing this plan publicly. We know that there was supposed to be a meeting on October 12th where Zelensky was going to reveal this plan, but because of the hurricane, that was pushed back. We know that there was a phone call earlier today between Biden and Zelensky where they talked about different defenses. There actually was a brand new security package for $425 million that was revealed, and we'll break that down in a different video on TikTok. But we're at a point now where I know that the EU is starting to get tired. The EU is starting to get scared, and so is Ukraine, because they're worried what's going to happen with the US election. You know, we're 20-something odd days away. A lot of people believe that if Donald Trump does take over, that all support for Ukraine would go away, and then EU is going to be holding the bag here with having to try to help Ukraine, with the United States kind of bailing out. And if that happens, Ukraine will not do well. Ukraine relies heavily on U.S. weapons, even though sometimes they're about to expire. If Ukraine doesn't have that support or those weapons, there's a bigger problem. If they don't have the Patriot system to protect its citizens, or the missiles themselves, the rockets, there's a bigger problem. And we're now at a stage where when you have so many of the bad guys come together and fight for themselves, if we don't put an end to it soon, it's only going to get bigger. And all of that money, all of that time, all those resources that we've been using for the past 2.5 years would have meant nothing, because we were scared. And I hate to use that word scared, but look, we live in the United States. I think that folks in the U.S. forget what it's like, the security. They forget how safe, we're so safe in the U.S. that we forget what threats are like. And because of that, we live our lives over here and we go, oh, we're still helping them, or we're doing this or doing that. And in Europe, they're not as safe. They're not. And every day they deal with the threats that something could happen. And because that we live in this la-la land over here, we sometimes dismiss these things. And that's what I think is like wrong with Trump's mindset here. There is no phone call you could pick up and call someone and end this. Russia is so deep into this that they've involved several of the other bad guy countries. Everyone's got to be punished. They have to. Everyone's got to learn a lesson to make sure that this stops in Ukraine and doesn't happen around the world. Because if it doesn't stop in Ukraine, it will continue. And once again, everything that we worked hard for, especially in the United States, to help, would have meant nothing. And that's going to be really bad, because that would mean that we need to send our own brothers, sisters, our friends to war, because we wouldn't allow Ukraine to do one thing, and that is strike Russian targets to bully Russia to come to the negotiation table. And that's where we're at. And I know that is, step number 3 in all of this, but some of these steps are super easy. Okay, here's an invitation, Ukraine. After this is done, you do have a guaranteed spot. Okay, Ukraine, you can go ahead and strike these certain targets. We're okay with it. We trust you to do this. Okay, Ukraine, we will help you create this buffer, and we'll protect you, since we are obligated to protect you, since the 90s. Okay, Ukraine, we'll love to get your resources. We'll buy your resources and create these opportunities. That's easy. You're making money on that. And number 5, okay, Ukraine, you guys are very skilled. We'll be happy to take you into certain areas, and you could train our men. These steps here are nothing outrageous. There's nothing here that states, oh my God, that's ridiculous. I can't believe they would do that. Or no way, we would never allow that. These are all things that I think are reasonable and are things that make sense. Because as someone who's been to Ukraine multiple times and had just finished up a massive trip documenting everyday life, Ukrainians deserve a peaceful day, a peaceful night, not being woken up at 6:30 in the morning because some madman decided to send some drones into Ukraine, not because they're going to hit anything, but because they know that it's going to piss off Ukrainians who are just trying to get a good night's sleep. And yes, it gets annoying after a while. Take it from me. Those air alerts get really annoying, and Russia knows that, and that's why they keep doing it over and over again. We're so close here, folks. And I'm hoping, I know Zelensky says before the end of 2025, US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, you all need to come together and just sign these documents. Let's finish this stuff. Because, like Ukraine, I'm worried that if a certain person gets into the office, Ukraine will never have that peace. And that's scary, because that means Europe will never have that peace. Well, we're here in the United States, living in La La Land. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section below, and I appreciate you guys. Make sure you are subscribed. We filmed 25 videos in Ukraine. It'll be coming to this channel, so do make sure you're subscribed, and I hope you're staying safe and sound.